Thriller films that were produced during the 1940s to the early 1970s were based on people's actual fears. These fears were considered realistic and could happen to any citizen living at that time. An example of this would be Jaws, which was released in 1975, directed by Steven Spielberg. The story is based on a giant man-eating shark attack that occurs on Amity Island, a fictional summer resort town. Police Chief Martin Brody, with the help of a marine biologist and professional shark hunter, are determined to hunt down the killer shark. The storyline itself sounds very basic, as it is a typical storyline of a thriller film. The setting of the film is based in a new summer holiday resort, which is not a typical setting for a thriller film. You would usually expect more of a mysterious set. The camera work when the shark attack is taking place doesn't show the shark off that much, so the violence isn't that graphic. The shark is only shown as the attack begins to build up. This is when the non-diegetic music begins to play. The non-diegetic music is very simple, but this helps add to the overall effect of the attack. The music gradually increases in pace to build up the tension whilst the shark is approaching. In comparison to a recent film such as Legend, which was released in 2015, the violent scenes are all shown in a lot of detail, as technology has developed over time to make it look more realistic and dramatic. You can actually see the violence that is taking place, such as punches and shootings in relation to the characters. An example of a thriller film that was released in the 1980s is The Shining, directed by Stanley Kubrick, starring Jack Nicholson, Shelley Duvall and Danny Lloyd. A man, his son and wife become the winter caretakers of an isolated hotel where Danny, the son, sees disturbing visions of the hotel's past using a telepathic gift known as The Shining. During their time staying there, Jack Nicholson begins to become possessed. The opening scene of The Shining is very simplistic. The scene is a long take of a car driving through the mountains. The scene itself doesn't look like a typical thriller scene. The non-diegetic sound is what makes the scene sound thriller-like, as the music is parallel. It doesn't fit with what's shown on the screen. The difference between this film and a more recently published thriller film is the setting. As this film was released in the 1980s, the setting looks old-fashioned and very dated in comparison to a setting from 2008 onwards. A horror/thriller setting looks more effective in earlier films such as The Shining, as the setting looks older, which helps emphasise the thriller setting. Towards the end of the 1980s, Dead Calm, which was released in 1989, brought a new insight to the genre, dealing with the elements of possession. The main character must escape from the villain in the movie, a mass murderer who already has her in his grasp after murdering her husband. This brought the idea of a thriller where the characters don't have to invade, but have to escape from their almost guaranteed death. Thriller films during the 1990s and 2000s put focus on mental disorders, obsession and violence, as well as the idea of an agent pursuing a villain. An example of this is Silence of the Lambs, which was released in 1991, in which an FBI agent has to talk to a cannibalistic psychologist to help track down a serial killer who has been killing and skinning women. Another example that shows violence is Goodfellas. A young boy grows up alongside gangsters in order to climb to the top, but he is oblivious to the horror that it causes, such as drug addiction, violence, etc. The violent scenes are very dominant, and this is what stands out in the film most effectively due to the graphic detail that is shown. Thriller films have evolved from some suspense in a film to violent and gory films. They also include technology to add suspenseful music and shots emphasising anxiety and fear that have expanded upon the genre. The most recent James Bond film starring Daniel Craig is about a cryptic message from the past leads. The most recent James Bond film starring Daniel Craig is about a cryptic message from the past which leads James Bond to Mexico City and Rome, where he meets the beautiful widow of an infamous criminal. After infiltrating a secret message, 007 uncover the existence of the sinister organisation, Spectre. As the film is set in the modern day, there are a lot of high-tech gadgets used in the film, and also technology that is seen as futuristic. The violent scenes occur regularly and are a main focus throughout the film. For example, at the beginning of the film there is a fight scene on the helicopter, which is shown in graphic detail. The weapons and gadgets that are used look very modern and advanced in comparison to weapons in films in the 1990s.